Privately Intelligent, the roundtable where AI headlines meet hot takes, and no one leaves without having their ideas challenged. I'm Hannah Wolfart, your host and professional wrangler of strong opinions. I'm joined by my fellow PIP IQ teammates, Josh Cohen, our paid ads wizard, Dalton Smith, our maestro of marketing mayhem, and Edwin Bevins, the guardian of brand sanity. Each episode, our guests will break down this week's biggest AI stories, from the game-changing to the just plain weird, and figure out what it all means for the way we work, market, and live. This is where smart ideas get debated, bad ideas get roasted, and AI hype gets a reality check. Let's get into it. All right, you guys, starting off, YouTube's new AI features for creators. So YouTube is rolling out a suite of AI tools to make creators' lives easier, from Ask Studio, an AI creative partner offering personalized insights, to features that auto-generate titles, thumbnails, and even video hooks. New upgrades include AI-powered dubbing in 20 different languages, deepfake detection, automatic live stream highlights, and Google's Veo 3 text-to-video generator. While these tools promise efficiency, past controversies over YouTube making AI tweaks without consent raise a key question. Is this true empowerment for creators or more platform control? Josh, does YouTube's new Ask Studio AI partner give creators more power or make them more dependent on the platform's algorithm?
In typical Josh fashion, I think it depends, and it really depends on how savvy the marketer is. So yes, the AI generation tools are great. They save you a lot of time. They allow you to be more efficient with creative rotations and testing and swapping things out to hit your audience, at the right place, right time with the right message. With that said, the AI algorithm side of things is a little bit, less transparent. We're not entirely sure, again, what the impact of letting the AI optimize things for you truly is. The selling point is that it's better. It's gonna make an impact. Personally, in the accounts that I've managed so far, not necessarily on YouTube, any AI product. I haven't really seen the brand awareness results yet, even though they're being promised to me, but the short-term bottom of the funnel metrics have suffered as a result. And I've seen that, talking to a bunch of different other advertisers. So my take is yes, it depends. I'm comfortable, giving more power on the generation side. I obviously can check it and make sure we're on, matching, tone and voice, so to speak, but I'm less willing to, hand the reins over on the algorithm side of things. But not every advertiser is like me. Some advertisers are okay. They have too much on their plate, just giving up full control and letting it be. And then some are not going to trust it at all, which could hurt you because remember, this is the new game. So if you're not playing Google's game, not giving into the algorithm even a little bit, you're going to get hurt. So it's a balancing act for sure.
And YouTube struggled because earlier this year they rolled out an AI feature that basically automatically edited videos for creators, and they didn't put a consent before doing this. So videos were changed, and creators were like, "Whoa, you changed my stuff without saying anything." So I think that's another issue they'll run into, and they're going to try to be more careful this time about making those like consent lines of, "Hey, yes, opt into this
Correct.
AI feature, etc."
Yeah, and that's a great point. And it's still there. They may make it more apparent that it's there, but remember, at the end of the day, these you know companies are there to pad their bottom line. Yes, there's an incentive to keep you on and keep advertising working for you, but the more that they can opt you into more things and spend more money, the better off for them. So again, they're doing a balancing act as well. So you've got to be smart. You got to understand what the platforms are doing in your favor and not, and proceed with caution. They're there to ultimately help you, but yeah, you can definitely go off the rails pretty quickly if you're not careful.
And YouTube's advertising this as like your own creative assistant, right? Right in your back pocket, for free, pretty much. Edwin, if AI can generate titles, thumbnails, even hooks for videos that creators are making, is this enhancing creativity or replacing it?
I'm gonna do a little bit of a Josh impression here. It's a little bit of both. Um, for a lot of users, I think this is something that's gonna support creativity. To put it another way, like this is raising the floor, I would say, on a lot of creative output. And that's a good thing, especially if you're somebody, maybe your organization's just getting off the ground. You need to do some fast ideation, fast creative work, fast iterations, and you want it all to look professional. That's a huge jumpstart. Where this turns into a problem, on the other hand, is that as more people are all using the same tool that's trained on the same data sets, there's a real risk of a trend toward sameness. The data and the tool are all pointing everybody in the same way. So, as the same time that you're raising the floor on creativity, you're lowering the ceiling. Because if it's pushing everybody towards like this standardized style, then you're not going to stand out. And so that's where it's going to take that creative eye to look for what are all the little things that you can do to stand out, to go against the grain. That takes human judgment and experience. So I would say the AI tools will get you to good very fast. But to get to great, you're going to still need human creativity.
And you got to balance that human creativity with what's going to feed the algorithm, right? That Josh was talking about. So it's
Which
gonna,
I think it's interesting what you say, Edwin, because we'll get into it just in a bit whenever Josh actually covers his article. But that's kind of covering or breaching the conversation of the work slop. Kind of the same instance, like the lower hanging tasks are being done, so prevalently that it's still requiring, someone else to pick it up and to review it before, being done again. So you're almost doing double the work.
all right. And there are other popular podcasts besides Privately Intelligent, you guys. Going to
Oh, no
Dalton
way.
for some podcast news from a big hitter, Joe Rogan. Dalton, what's up?
Yeah, so Matthew McConaughey was on Joe Rogan this past week, and they discussed the future of AI and privacy on Rogan's podcast. Rogan predicts a future where people may effectively read each other's minds, but warns it'll come at the cost of giving up all of your privacy. McConaughey agrees with the need for privacy, saying he needs open-ended AI tools because he doesn't want to give away personal information. Instead, he imagines a private AI that he could train his own data, books that he's written, articles that he's saved, journals that he's kept, things like that. This kind of system would act like a personal knowledge base, helping him rediscover forgotten ideas and even reflect on questions like, where do I stand politically, or what books would I enjoy next? So let's get into a few questions. Edwin, McConaughey dreams of a private AI. Is that the future of AI, personalized but private, or is that just wishful thinking?
I mean, I definitely think that vision is possible. I mean, in fact, as all of us here know, the building blocks already exist. There are private AI tools today, like PipIQ, bringing us this podcast, that help you really keep those personal files secure, have a model interrogate them for answers, scrub your personally identifiable information before you connect to a larger external model. I would say really the harder part is not necessarily the technology, it's the data. For most people, I'm skeptical that there's enough of an archive for an AI to meaningfully tell you something like, here's your politics, or here's what books you'd like at an individual level. That's going to take detailed journals, like he was talking about, a store of saved articles, years of writing and record keeping. And sure, I mean, there's a few people who do that, but it's probably not the majority. On the other hand, if you're somebody like a Matthew McConaughey, somebody in the public eye, you've done decades of recorded media appearances, there's published written profiles, even your filmography, reveals his taste in scripts and themes. He's even got a memoir. You could absolutely use that. Stuff like that makes it a lot easier for a private AI to train on that body of work and be personally insightful. So the idea of private AI, not wishful thinking at all, but how applicable it is on the individual level versus an organizational level depends a lot on how much do you exist in a digital form.
And I
Right.
and I and I think Bevan's another point there is, you may seem more comfortable putting your personal data in a you know, private tool. But then, we might start getting into a proliferation of private tools, and, some are going to be safer than others. And how comfortable am I giving something and putting it online on the internet, regardless if it's not connected to any sort of cloud, right? How much am I willing to give up or provide? that's going to be another thing, people run into. So like I said, it's a great idea. And again, yes, the building blocks are there. But yeah, it's how much people actually have to offer it, and are they going to offer it? Either way.
To your point though, Josh, I think is as long as the end consumer knows or has a certainty that the LLM is considered private, they may be more willing to share that information.
That's true.
Hannah, which future is more likely? One where AI makes us more self-aware, or one where it strips us of control over our own thoughts and data?
Well, the optimist side in me wants to lean towards the version where AI could make us more self-aware, but I think it's about intentionality and how we're using these products. So maybe the danger isn't the tech itself. It's like Edwin said, it's the data. So if we're handing over too much control without noticing, like too much of our data, too much of our insights into the universe without knowing where it's going and what this product is learning from, I think that is handing over too much control. But if we're using a private structured platform that can learn from our patterns and our behavior, and it's kind of locked into just being about you or you and your business, or it's not feeding in things from everywhere, then I think it could make you more self-aware because it's helping you learn and be better, and instead of just making you more of the same, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I actually read a book a few years ago and it's called Weapons of Mass Destruction. And it kind of talks about those same points about you know, how efficient the AI actually is and how, self-aware it makes you become because it does require some human elements to it to learn and train the model to perform the correct way.
Thanks, Dalton. All right, we're going to throw it to Josh for some new AI verbiage, maybe work slop. I don't know. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, well, I guess you've heard it here first. Despite everything that we've been talking about, obviously the surge in generative AI and integrations in the workplaces, most companies are not really seeing any measurable ROI here. One possible take or reason for it is because AI tools are being used to produce work slop. There's your buzzword of the day. Content that appears polished, but it's not really substantive. So what it ends up happening is, downstream work suffers. You're spending a lot of cognitive effort trying to, comb through, review, decide what's valuable, what isn't. Research from Better Up Labs in Stanford found that 41% of workers have encountered such AI generated work slop, costing nearly 2 hours of rework per instance and creating downstream productivity, trust, and collaboration issues. So leaders really need to consider how they may be encouraging, an indiscriminate organizational mandate. Use AI, integrate it into every part of your work, make it a good investment for us. But they're not really giving any guidance on how to integrate it. They're just saying integrate it and let's see how it performs for us. So to counteract this work slop, leaders should try to model purposeful AI use. Come up with a system of organizational rules, processes, procedures before you integrate it into your organization, and even encouraging like a pilot mindset. Try it out. Let's see how it works. Let's see what does work, doesn't, and then go on from there. And I think this won't only just cut down on work slop, but it'll allow us to be a lot more optimistic about the power of AI and how it fits in, to our work and our personal lives. So instead of boosting productivity, AI seems to be, creating work slop, a lot more work down the line than we anticipated. So, Dalton, is work slop a passing phase as, we all learn to use AI better, or is it the natural outcome of relying on machines, to think for us? And as a result, should companies slow down AI adoption until the tools get better, or just push forward and accept that this is a growing pain?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think it's partially a passing phase as, AI is adopted more throughout the country and throughout, all of the organizations. But I think there can also be a few arguments made that work slop is going to be, an inherent issue. I believe, companies will always have to straddle the fine line between managing the speed of generation. So like the speed of which they're generating the work, and then, the cost or the time barrier of which, it takes to review that work. So I think, they're always going to be managing or straddling that fine line between the two. But in regards to whether companies should, push forward or slow down, I think there's positives to each angle. But I think that, they should begin piloting in areas with low downside risk to begin.
Yeah,
That's
no,
kind of my take.
yeah, I agree. And I'm gonna bring out another term here, sort of related, like the Dunning-Kruger effect, which again is the idea that if you've studied something for 5 to 10 minutes, you think you're a genius, and then you go a little deeper and you realize you know nothing, and then you come out the other side and you actually do know a lot. So I think in the AI world, I think a lot of us are at that tipping point where we're like, AI can do everything. It's going to solve all my problems. I no longer need to work. I think we're there. And then, we have that expectation that it can do everything, it do everything properly. And it's kind of hitting us in the face that you have to apply it properly. It's like any tool. If you use it wrong, it's not going to work for you. So rather than abandon it, we're starting to think like, how can we use this the right way for us, not for the next person, but for us. And I think we've sped up, we're gonna slow down a little, and then we're gonna speed up even faster as these tools get better and we understand how to use them better. So I think we're just going through it. So to your point, Dalton, yeah, I think there's going to be a good mix of slowing down. But yeah, definitely don't abandon it. I think abandoning is the wrong thing because you're going to get left behind. All right, I'm going to kick it to Edwin. So could a private AI system like our own Pip IQ help reduce work slot by adding structure and context, or is garbage in, garbage out always inevitable?
A private AI system can definitely help here. I'm not going to say it's the universal solution here for to fix everything, but it will definitely help. As I look like we've talked about, the problem with the work slop, it's not necessarily as much the technology as it is how it's being used. If you're going to a generic model and just trying to churn out content without clear direction, you're gonna get something that looks really polished because AI content is always gonna come out looking really, no errors, looking grammatical at least, but looking really polished, but kind of hollow. And then, like we said, that shifts that burden of work down the stream, 2 hours of work for every instance, like you were saying. Where a private AI system can make a difference, like you said, it's structure and context. So instead of starting from like a blank slate, they're working with your actual data. They have your past reports, they have your playbooks, they have meeting notes, they have quality standards that you've set in advance. They have your brand. And so that is going to help ensure that output, or maybe not ensure, but it'll help increase the chance that your output is deep and relevant and not just kind of filler. But you have to keep in mind, garbage in, garbage out is not, it's a real thing. You can't just get rid of it with a quick technological fix. If the source material is messy or missing, or if somebody's just making really lazy prompts, the output won't necessarily be better just because the AI is private. So you really need within an organization to have leadership that's modeling how to use AI the right way, that's making sure those norms and standards are set up, teaching teams how to use AI as a collaborator and not just a cheap shortcut. So if you do it the right way, then absolutely private AI can cut down on work slop. But if you do it the wrong way, garbage in, garbage out is a tough monster to kill.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. And we also got to keep in mind that there is garbage in open AI and in private. So, an open AI model is still pulling and trying to fill in the blanks from the whole world that has asked similar things. It's trying to provide relevance from, the greater group. A private model, unless you're feeding it, yeah, good prompts and good data and good things, it doesn't really have a lot to pull from, especially if you're limiting it, from pulling from, an open source model as well. So yeah, I think you have to be careful on both ends of the spectrum, but I think there's a lot more control and a lot more chance for relevance in a private model for sure.
All right, let's go to our final story of the day. Edwin, is it true that we shouldn't be trusting AI models?
I mean, here we were just talking about the work slop and giving us bad outputs. This is a slightly different angle. Um, and I think we've mentioned this just now, actually a few minutes ago. If you've used AI for any real amount of time, you've probably run into what people will call hallucinations. And that's when you give a prompt and then the AI gives you an answer that just is not true. It is not correct. A lot of that we've realized over time is that because these AI models have been programmed to answer with confidence, people don't like it when the AI says, I don't know. They like the AI to have an answer. But if they don't know, they kind of just guess. And that's where you get a lot of these hallucinations. Now we're finding actually a different problem. So there was actually a recent report coming from OpenAI, partnered with Apollo Research, and they're finding that AI models do what they call scheming. This is not just hallucinating, this is deliberate deception. So for an example, maybe a model will claim that it has already done something when it hasn't. Or it might actually hide its true objectives. I mean, this is some Skynet stuff here, really. Uh, these experiments have even found that when you try to train out the scheming, if you don't do it right, it actually backfires, and the model becomes even better at hiding its deception. So the best strategy that they have found so far to counteract scheming is a method that they're calling deliberative alignment. And so this is where the model has to review anti-deception rules before it acts. And at least in tests so far, that has reduced observable scheming. Now, for what it's worth, to reduce the panic, OpenAI says it has not seen serious scheming in live systems yet. The main thing you've seen so far is minor deceptive behaviors, as they call them, like claiming a task is done when it's not. But as these models get more and more capable, more and more autonomous, the risk of actually harmful deception becomes a real problem that we're all going to have to address. So, first question I want to throw at you, Hannah. Uh, deliberative alignment, this term. Do you think this sounds like a real fix, or is this just another band-aid until the AIs figure out how to outsmart the experts again?
I feel like it's more of just a band-aid. I think that you can teach the model to repeat rules, and that might reduce some surface level hallucinations. But if the system is smart enough to understand the rules and repeatedly work those rules, then it's probably eventually going to become smart enough to bend or hide around those as well. And we just don't know when that point will come. This is a short-term fix. So if we want to make a real fix, it probably has to be more structural, and it might even have to involve something like regulation.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say like to what degree whenever you're getting it to review these rules, to what degree is it following the rules versus, like we said, is it just pushing off that deception further into the future? Are we training the AI to take a longer view? We don't really know. But I mean, and also to what degree is there, again, as we approach like AGI potentially, that's a whole nother question. Um, Josh, I'm gonna put another question at you too. How much deception would it take, do you think, for people to really lose trust in these AI systems altogether?
I think we give humans more credit to be able to sift through, what's true and not, than we think. You go into your social media feed. How often is it complete garbage, non-factual nonsense? And people pick it up and they run with it and think it's the truth. I can't remember whose quote this is, but whatever is true for you is true. So yes, there are things that are undeniably factual, and especially like in a private type of AI situation. company policies or what data you fed it, so you could tell when something is deliberately off. But if there's you're getting into a new field or trying to learn about something that you have no clue about, yes, could it just be a hallucination or deception? I'm not asking people to be able to split hairs between the two. Uh, but you're going to have to be able to have some level of, ability to sniff out authentic stuff versus non. That's something that we're going to have to get trained in. Just like we have to get trained in how to use the tools, we have to be trained in how to sift through what it's spitting back out at us. That way. Now, if everything that we're doing is constantly that, and I'm having to sift through this and more of it is bogus than is true, then I might lose trust in it. But either way, I'm fed bogus stuff all day long, and really, it's up to me or anybody else looking at the information to go fact finding to say, is this true? Is this legitimate? So I think we're going to get better at that. But I don't really see people losing trust in the AI systems altogether unless we get into a Skynet situation, right? Where our overlords are making us do their bidding. So yeah,
By that point, it's too late anyway. So
yeah, it's far too late. And I know we talked a lot about regulation, prior to this, and I'm not up for or against that, but I'm always curious who watches the Watchmen. Who watches the people that put those into be those rules to be. So.
All right, you guys, it's time for the final part of our day, debate of the day. Would you rather have a big model that's trained on the whole internet or a super custom model that's only trained on your own knowledge? I'll go first, you guys. I say a big model that's trained on the whole internet. And I purely say this because if I've learned anything from working with our CEO, Fran Tarkenton, it's that you have to be a continuous learner. And you can't learn just from the people around you and just from yourself. You have to constantly be reading and seeking out new opinions and ideas. If we're just looking at a model that's only trained on our knowledge, how can we possibly continue to improve and grow and get better? I think that continuous improvement means continuous learning. So that you get from outside ideas, and that's a big model can give that to you. All right, Edwin, what do you think?
yeah, I'm gonna be on the same side as you on this one, Hannah. If I have to choose, give me the big model. When I go to AI, it's usually because I want to figure out something that I don't know. I can try to put as much of my context into the prompt as I can, but the ultimate information, the knowledge that I'm looking for, it's probably not something I possess already. So I need something that's more than me. And like you said, I want to be open to change. I worry that if something was trained on just me, the results would ultimately kind of become a caricature of myself. Like if anybody, hopefully many people are familiar with the concept of Flanderization from The Simpsons. The character of Ned Flanders, he starts out as this complex character who's got some quirky traits. And then over the course of years and writers making jokes, he eventually is just the quirky traits. And I don't want that to happen to me as a person. I want to become more and not just less.
Dalton, what do you think?
All right, I'm going to take the opposite side of the spectrum here. I would rather have a model that's trained on my own knowledge. I agree with the points that you all make regarding, always being adaptive and willing to learn, and kind of using, the larger piece to kind of bounce ideas and kind of grasp, more knowledge. But on the other side of that, having your own, model that's custom to you, would make it highly relevant. And then in terms of your productiveness, it would really reduce work slop, because everything would be highly relevant to your organization. Um, and then you can also, you can have every, individual in the organization learn from the mistakes by inputting data and such without having to be, concerned of the fear of, data leaks and compliance and such. So I think having your own model would, be a little bit more beneficial than having an open whole internet model.
Josh, close us out. What do you think?
I'm a shades of gray type of person, so I'm going to say why not both? And I really think it comes down to what your end goal is. Am I trying to, expand my horizons and learn in an area where I'm not, I don't have the data to fill things in? Then open model, right? I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to see what's relevant. I'm trying to find the trends. And then sometimes I'm like, I have plenty of data here to siphon through, and I don't want to fill it with anything external. I really want to learn and dive deeper. You can learn from within, so to speak, right? So it really depends on, what my end goal is. And, we're also thinking of these things as, mutually exclusive. I see a future where you tell the tool how much of it you want it to be open versus private. I'm thinking of interstellar TARS, less humor, please. 20% open, 80% private. And the model pulls, the data accordingly, to fill in those blanks. And I also liken this to, when you go to college, I always thought that there was just one library on campus. There's like 20, and there's specialized libraries for different things. There's a legal library, there's a science library. And yes, the main library has books from all, topics and areas of interest. Just like, one big model can have, pull from everything, but you're going to get the rise of, the private ones that are just for your organization. Then you're going to get the rise of just niche ones that are for a particular field. I feel like what I'm most excited about is that long tail of AI. The private, the niche, the proliferation of that. And I feel like that's, will slowly come. So either way, tools like PIP, I think are great. Because they can do both. They can pull from, the open world. Yes, they encrypt all your data and keep it safe. But either way, they're still able to, blend the two. So yeah, I think why not both?
Thanks, guys. For more of Privately Intelligent, follow Pip IQ on socials. We're Pip_IQ on X, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updates on new episodes and more. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.